Hi folks, today we're going to talk about a mysterious phenomenon from which I have personal experience. The legendary Black Panthers of the Southern United States. Here on Lessons from the Purple Chair. Hi folks, welcome back to Lessons from the Big Purple Chair. One intellectual's musings from the comfort of a big purple wingback. You know, folks, I've always said that a thoughtful man must always keep an open mind, but yet be objective and critical and come to proper conclusions. Well, I've always tried to stick to that. However, I think with that open mind and and the conclusion, sometimes you can get a little stubborn once you feel like you've come to that conclusion. To be open-minded to changing your mind. And in at least one case, I had something happen, something big and real jump right out in front of me to show me that one of my conclusions was very wrong. First I'll say that when I was about 14, this would have been in the summer of 1984, I was out hunting in eastern Kentucky. In the night, I was raccoon hunting, and I was coming home, and as I was coming over this mountain, suddenly I heard the most blood-curdling scream. It sounded very similar to a woman screaming, like a banshee, and it run through my spine and literally made my blood go cold when I heard this. Now, a lot of people have said, well, you probably heard a screech owl. No, I've heard 1,000 screech owls, and yes, they're deafening and they can make you jump, but you end up like damn screech owl, But so I know very much what they sound like. This is not what this sounded like. This sounded like a blood-curdling scream from a woman, but at the same time, I knew it wasn't quite human. And needless to say, and the funny thing is, my dog run under my legs with his tail between his legs for protection. Yeah, I need to protect, I'm going to protect him. So either way, me and the dog got home very quick with me shining behind my back a lot. When I told my grandmother and my father, they're like, they hadn't heard it. They were not far from the site, but they didn't hear it. They say, "Oh, well, son, you heard a panther. That's a panther." And when I described it, my grandmother said, "Oh yeah," and my dad said, "Oh yeah, that's a panther." I said, "They're rare now. You don't hear them much anymore. We thought they moved out of this country, 20 years ago, but what you're describing is a panther." Now, here's the thing: I had heard of these panthers since I was a little kid. I'd heard old people talk about them. They talked about them nonchalant, no different, about what we saw a panther moving up the street, up the road, or we saw one going over a hill. We heard one screaming, outside the farmhouse one night. And they talked about this like they would talk about, seeing a deer or a rare sighting of a bear or something like that. And it wasn't until I was well into my late teens that I realized and read that there are no indigenous big black cats in North America. The only big black cat on the American continent would be the South American jaguar. But outside of that, and they're pretty much in Central and South America now. There are no big, large black cats, and according to zoology, there never has been in North America. So I started figuring from hearing these stories that, they're probably talking about what people are experiencing is either misidentification. They are looking at an animal at night, so that could be just about anything, or that they were most likely seeing mountain lions. And though mountain lions are of a tawny color, in the dark, they could appear, shadowy and dark and look black. And I figured that that's what people were reporting. And mountain lions do come into that part of Kentucky. They're not as prevalent as they used to, even though I hear they're making a comeback. But I figured, a rare sighting, one here and there, is probably, considering the rarity of people talking about them, I figured that's what they were seeing. And I was pretty much satisfied with that conclusion. Until the summer of 2009. In the summer of 2009, I was actually working in Kentucky as a delivery driver for a food bank. I was delivering food up into eastern Kentucky to be distributed out, usually by church groups. And I was driving along. It was about 11:30 in the morning. I was running on the road. I can't remember the exact number for this road, but it runs between I-75 and Somerset, and it is like a highway. And this is out pretty much in the country. And like most of Kentucky, on one side of the road there were cliffs, and and on the other side there was there's mostly cow pasture. But in this one section, it was hilly on both sides with cliff sides on both sides. As I was approaching this, now remember, it is 11:30 in the morning on July. It is a very bright summer day. Almost about to hit noon, so perfect visibility. And as I was driving along, I noticed up ahead of me, traffic wasn't that heavy that morning, and as I was driving ahead, I noticed one of the cliffs come right down to the edge of the road. I mean, there was the stone come down almost like a ledge, come right down just maybe 5 or 6 feet from the road. And I saw this pitch black animal come down that cliffside onto that rock ledge facing the road. When I first saw it at a distance, my first impression was a big dog. But as I got closer, and automatically I realized this is not a dog. It moved, with that low crouching agility of a cat with the long black tail. I saw it quite clearly. All of a sudden it jumped out. It was trying to cross the road, and it jumped out in the road, and I was very close, and I actually had to gear down and hit my brakes on this truck. And it actually pushed back on its hind legs, front legs straight out like a cat will do when it's trying to decide which direction it's going to go, and it's startled. And I looked right at it. I mean, it was, me sitting there high up in that cab, I'm looking down at it, less than 25 feet away. I'm looking right at it, and it was very much a big black cat. Looking at it, and I have seen cougars, it's very obvious to me that this was a cougar or a mountain lion, puma, whatever you want to call it. It's, the shape of its ears, the boxiness of its face, the shape of its snout, even its gold eyes, which were quite brilliant in that black coat, especially as it was frightened. Ears had laid down, with the roundness of those rare little peak ears, and that tail that comes out in that beautiful puff at the end. I knew I was looking at a cougar, but this one was just as black as soot, beautifully black, and with the sun shining, I could see, I could see all the shining on the coat. It startled for a bit, when I stopped, looked at me, and then shot across the other side of the road. And I looked over and watched it, and I could still see it in my mind, going up the hillside into the trees, and seeing those back legs digging in, and pushing up the hill, and seeing the V's of light shining off that beautiful coat, which was pitch black, no doubt, close to noon, looking dead at it. And on up the road it went, and I'm like, oh my God, I have seen the legendary panther of eastern Kentucky. And I'm like, I guess my conclusion was wrong, because it was not dark, and that was pitch black. It was not dark, it was bright day, and he was pitch black. So I'm like, my God, I've seen a cryptid. I've seen an unknown animal. I've never seen Bigfoot, and I've never seen the Loch Ness Monster, but the Panther of Kentucky, I laid eyes on less than 25 feet away. So, I know, and I sound like a typical eyewitness, I know that this particular creature very much exists. And interestingly, I have a little bit more proof for it. Within I think it was a few months after that, I saw this thing online where, not far from where I made my sighting, a trail cam, it picked up this picture. And as you can see, that is a big black cat. Very similar, if not the same, as the one that I saw, and within a couple of miles of it. So I both have seen it, and this is a photographic evidence that the big black cats of the South are very much real. Now, these big black cats, these so-called Panthers, have been seen throughout the southeastern states and in the South, such as places as far as Alabama, Georgia, North and South Carolina, West Virginia. And they've been known for over, well over 100 years. Like I said, my grandparents and my great-grandparents talked about them. In fact, my paternal grandmother remembers seeing some deadwoods. There's a story in my family that my great-grandfather, actually, who lived not far from where I heard the scream, by the way. In fact, just right down below in the holler. I'm from Kentucky, from the holler, not hollow. From where I was standing, and he had left the window open in the summer, and it was said that these big cats are actually attracted to light, which I find interesting. We'll go into that later. But he left the windows open. Apparently, he woke up in the night and heard something in the room. Him and his wife started screaming because she saw these eyes looking at her from a chest of drawers. So he jumped up. And they had a kerosene lamp, and he turned the kerosene flame up, and there were two of these damn things in the room. One was sitting on top of the chest of drawers right beside the bed. Another one was in the corner of the room. He kept a gun, typical hillbilly. He kept a gun beside the bed, grabbed the gun. They jumped up, and he shot both of them. He shot the one on the chest of drawers, from what I heard, and then the other one tried to run toward the window, and he shot it. Well, so you had two dead Black Panthers in his house. So this word of this spread in the community, and a lot of older people that I knew, this would have happened in the 1940s. That I knew, the old people I knew had seen these things. They'd come up, because it spread. This was a rare thing, and no, you never got to shoot one. So you actually get to see one was something, and a lot of people came and looked at them, to wish that they'd had a reporter or something could take a picture of them. But my grandmother, who was a little girl at the time, said she looked, that she saw them, said they were about the size of Walker coon hounds, which is about the size of a cougar, and that they were just as black as coal, very much like the one that I saw. My own father, when he was a young boy, was walking home along the road we grew up on, which is a gravel road, and very dark. There were no street lamps out there, and he heard something snarling, roaring, making noise, and he heard that scream, and he saw, because it was blacker than the night, it was a little bit of moonlight, and he saw it creeping, following him down the road, which terrified him. He did get home, and it never did pounce or attack, but it did follow him. Apparently, he was thinking about it. I'd heard all these stories, and I had pretty much discounted them as, both folk tale and misidentification of mountain lions in the night, until I had my experience, and now I completely believe them. Now, like I said, the description is always of these big black cats, that they are attracted to light, and that they screamed like a woman. Over and over again, I heard they screamed like a woman. It was just like the scream I heard. And these are obvious cougars or mountain lions. And I've had someone, I spoke about this once on Facebook, I had somebody come back to me and say, well, cougars don't scream. Oh, yes, they do. In fact, if you look in my description below, you'll see I'll put a YouTube video of a night cam with someone made with sound, and you'll see this cougar screaming. And yes, it sounds just like a woman when they do it. It's blood curdling. Imagine hearing that as a little boy standing out in the middle of the woods, about a mile from home. Yeah, and that's what I experienced. I think I nearly peed my pants. But anyway, so it comes down to, to the scientific examination of these, and according to the book of zoology, there are no big black cats in North America, but yet there are. And not only do I have the trail cam pic, as well as all these experiences going back 100 years, But also, every now and then one of them is shot, and we, like, for instance, this picture, which I've been trying to find the provenance for, when it was taken and all that. But it's very obvious that this is a black cougar that someone has shot. The style of clothes looks like it was probably back in at least the 1930s or 40s. So these creatures do exist. So how do we explain this? Well, as far as the sightings, I think that they are extremely rare. I do think that they are a cougar, and I think the black variation is extremely rare. I think it is a genetic anomaly that pops up every so many generations, maybe one or two. And that was the reason they're so rarely seen. But now science says that mountain lions do not display any militanism. Militanism is a genetic condition by which there's too much melanin in the genes, and it causes all the fur to be black. And they say that this doesn't occur, and it's never been recorded to occur in mountain lions. Well, that type of, just like black squirrels and other animals that sometimes you see this happen with, or albinos, cougars, mountain lions, whatever you would call them, would not be immune to this. And I think that the gene is obviously floating around, maybe isolated to the southeastern and southern United States, to the populations there. Now, and it may be one of these things where both of the parents have to carry that particular gene for it to come out. It's like a blue eyes, a recessive gene. To have blue eyes, both parents have to carry the gene for blue eyes. Because if you have one blue eye gene and brown eye gene, you're going to be brown eyed. You have to have blue and blue somewhere in your background, somewhere in your family tree and close. So I think that may be true with these black cougars, that just so every now and then you get the right combo, and they're not passing along. That's one possibility. Then you have what's known as bottleneck evolution. Obviously, and this could very much work here, because obviously there is a small population of mountain lions in this part of the world. They're rare to see. Rarely do you hear anyone having trouble with them. Rarely do you ever hear of their people in the South having their livestock attacked like they do out west, where they're much more prevalent. In fact, in all my life, I never heard of one of these panthers or mountain lions ever attacking any of our livestock, or anyone's livestock I ever knew. Never even heard a story about it. So apparently these are very rare animals in that area, in that region. So what could happen, and what may have happened, is that you had one or two of these cougars that did have this genetic recessive gene for militanism. Then their cubs would come out black. Well, in a bottleneck, that means with a low population, that limits the genetic pool they're pulling from. So therefore, in this area you get a evolutionary bottleneck. It means with this, certain traits gets bottlenecked down to where it becomes a common trait, at least in that area. And that could be what has happened. That just due to a small population, this militanism has become dominant in this group, or at least did up until 50 years ago. Because I find it very interesting that if this was just a legend, why do people not see them anymore? It's very rare to hear people talk about seeing the panthers. In fact, I grew up that people told me, "You don't have to worry, they're not around anymore. They may be up in Tennessee, but they're not here anymore." So if it's a legendary animal, some fantastical, they'd say that it was still around. But or sightings like mine would be very rare, but they weren't prevalent anymore. So I think that either one of those, just either one rare beast, which is the reason they're rarely seen, or in that area you have the bottleneck of the militanism, which caused a small population in a certain area. Now, of course, once any other cougars would move into that area, mountain lions, and you change that genetic pool, they go back to tawny again. But that could answer it. But the funny thing is, the black cat phenomenon is not limited to just the United States. Interestingly, in England, they have a black cat legend as well, like the black cat of Exmoor, the beast of Exmoor, which was photographed, even videotaped at one point, and it was obviously a big black panther. That one most likely was a not a black cougar, but more likely a true black jaguar. As the obviously big cats are not indigenous at all to the British Isles. I believe that here we're looking at pets that got loose. And at one time, around the time that these sightings started occurring, which I think was like in the 70s to 80s, there was a big craze for getting exotic cats, and a lot of people couldn't handle them and they would get away. We know of a couple of cases of that, in fact. So I think the ones in England are definitely, they've been brought over as a pet and got away, and once they do, they are the alpha predators. There's nothing going to be feeding on a jaguar in England. And in fact, even here in the United States, in the southern United States, I mean, they have bears, but they even they wouldn't take on a mountain lion. Mountain lion would be the alpha beast of the area. And also, there's not a question about them having the habitat or the game. There's plenty of that for any cougar of any color, so that's not an issue. But then at the same time, I do think that a lot of the sightings are misidentification. They can just as easily be a regular cougar that, like I said, that's seen outdoors, only seen quickly in shadow, a big black cat, or they could be bears. Bears can be quite thin and they can run pretty fast. And if you saw in the night running, you could easily think that you're seeing a panther, especially if you have that expectation. Coyotes are also a possibility. A dog is a possibility. But however, what's believed to be the number one misidentification is just a simple big black house cat. House cats can get pretty large, as we all know, especially these big barn cats. And if you're outside and you're looking, and your adrenaline gets up and you see something, often judging size is very difficult. And science has proven that no matter what you think you're seeing, or because of the adrenaline, because of that excitement, your sense of dimension can be distorted. So it's very easy to look out and see this black skulking cat going across the field that's maybe 3 feet long from which would still be a big cat. 3 feet long from nose to the end of the tail. It could suddenly translate into 6 feet long. And even a lot of pictures that have been taken of these so-called big black cats have turned out, just from the shape of their face, you can tell it's just a big house cat. So those things. But what I saw definitely was no damned house cat. This thing was at least the size. What I saw was a black cougar. I looked right at it. I had black cats. I know what a black cat looks like. And it was broad daylight. Once again, nearly noon, bright sunlit day, and I was looking at a big black mountain lion, period. So I know that they exist. So, but, once again, until, science can be very stubborn on some of these things. And once they make a ruling, oh, well, there is no record, what you're seeing is misidentification, automatically. Well, when you have pictures of ones dead and you have pictures of ones from trail cams, how much more? I guess we're going to have to go shoot one and throw one up on the desk of some official at Game and Wildlife to prove that the damn thing exists. Okay, well, that's all I've got for the black panther of eastern Kentucky, and as well as the rest of the southern United States. You know what? If you've had any type of experience like this, if you see one of these black panthers, if you're from one of these states, I would, or even if you've seen one of the big black British cats, like the Beast of Exmoor, I would love to hear about it. Please go down below and leave me a comment. Tell me your story. And while you're at it, go ahead, and I know my channel is new, but let's get some momentum going. And hit that subscription button, hit that like button. I'd love to come aboard. And until next time, find yourself a good chair, get yourself a good book, and find your passion. Later, fellas.